Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual fireside chat today. My name is Tara Hershen, and I'm an account director here at Haiilo, where we really empower you to reach, engage, and understand your employees. And as an account director, I'm really helping my clients, and it's great because I get to get the inside scoop of what they're doing with their communication strategies, both internally and externally, using an employee advocacy platform, or how they're communicating internally with their employees and making sure that everybody's in the know of what's going on within the organization. So I have a wonderful job of getting to be a part of that and help support my clients and help them with best practices and things like that across the board. So I get a sneak peek into a lot of different organizations and love to see how everybody is doing this. If you're new to Haiilo, we are the leading employee communications, insights, and advocacy platform that really allows you to see the measurable business impact that your communications have. We're proud to have more than 800 international customers trusting Haiilo to really help them better reach, engage, and understand more than 2 million employees every single day. So I'm going to be moderating the chat today around leading the way, empowering women in communications by sharing strategies for success. Just to go over some quick logistics, and then we'll dive right in and get started. So during the presentation, all participants are going to be in listen-only mode. So feel free to submit written questions at any time by using the Q&A option that you will see on your screen. It's in the bottom right-hand corner. You can also connect with us and chat anytime or react with emojis, to what's being presented. So we would love for this to be as interactive as it can be, being a webinar. And to kick us off, I would love for you all to go ahead and let us know where you're joining from in the chat so we can just see who all we have here today. We also will be sharing a recording of this session following the webinar. And so you can rewatch it, share with your colleagues, share with anybody else. Thanks. I see some people starting to add in where they're coming in from. And to kick us off, I'm going to start with some quick intros for everybody, and then we're really going to dive in and you'll get to hear from all of our wonderful, esteemed panel of women. So first up is Erica Haiilo-Watts. She's joining us as the Senior Social Media Manager with Otis Elevator. Erica, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe share a mantra or something that you live by?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Erica Haiilo-Watts. I'm joining you from Farmington, Connecticut, which is where Otis Elevator's headquarters are. I love living in New England. That's a fun fact about me. And if you know me really well, you know that I love Peloton. And that and that's where I'm getting my mantra today from. One of my favorite instructors, Robin, she uses a mantra, know your worth and add tax. And I love that because I feel like as women, we tend to settle for the minimum. So it just reminds me you're worth so much more and it's okay to ask for that.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I like that mantra. I'll take it with myself as well. Well, I'm so happy to have you join us today, and thanks for taking the time out. Next, we have Andrea Greenhouse, and she is the president and founder behind Vision to Voice. And Andrea is being a part of a women-owned business. I'm sure, and this is one of the reasons we asked you to join this, but, the topics of today's discussions really hit close to home for you. And you've built your whole organization around this. So we're so excited to hear from you. Could you share a little bit about your professional journey with us and why you're looking forward to this discussion today in particular?
Sure. So I've been a professional communicator for over 30 years. And this year we're celebrating 24 years being in business. And I've got to say, I've learned a lot in all that time. I've also worked a lot on myself, my spiritual self, emotional self, professional self. And so that's been a real journey. A lot has changed in 30 years and a lot has stayed the same. And I like to think that I've evolved as well.
That's great. I'm sure you have. I can't wait to hear more about it. And as we get into the questions today, I know you have some great answers to fill us in with. All right. Next, we have Medea Oakes, and she's joining us as the Director of Communications and PR with Calumet Specialty Products and Partners. Medea, can you share a bit of your background with the group and something that continues to inspire you on a daily basis?
Sure. I am joining today from Indianapolis, Indiana. My career has spanned government public relations, manufacturing public relations, financial public relations. So I've been a professional communicator for over 25 years myself, not quite as many as Andrea, but I'm getting there. Not to show my age. But what inspires me as a communicator is looking at my world every day and seeing where communication can solve problems or create them, depending on how well it's done. And I want to be part of the solution. And then also on the side of being a professional woman, my granddaughters and my daughter, and showing them, what's possible, that you can have a profession that fulfills you. You can conduct yourself in a way that you can be proud of professionally. And you can also have a family life and everything else that you love as well.
That's wonderful. And what a great example you're setting for not only your grandchildren and your daughter, but everybody else. And just aspiring to be the best you can be, and the most, and like you said, being a professional woman and being a professional at the same time. All right, well, last but certainly not least, we have Augustina, or August as I like to call her, Caprino, joining us as the Global Digital Marketing Manager with Boston Consulting Group. She's actually in London, but I know Boston Consulting Group, so give you a little kind of around the pond on that. So August, can you share a bit about your professional journey and possibly like what really drives your passion with building advocacy and developing that great community that you've built so far?
Of course. Hello, everyone. As Sarah said, joining you from UK today. So I started back working as a communications and marketing person for SAP long time ago. And I would be focused on doing marketing for the recruiting side, which was really interesting because it was a blend of like employee and marketing that I never experienced before. Then I moved more into the product side, so I did a lot of digital campaign marketing, and then I moved into BCG, which is where I'm today, to build from the ground up an employee advocacy program. So right now, what I do is manage our global advocacy strategy across the world, and basically try engaging all the employees in our internal, external communications, and also marketing initiatives. And I would say what drives me or what drives my passion about creating a community is to see that how that collective voice that you can create actually impacts every aspect of the business, not only from a marketing perspective, but also it can impact how your employees are engaged with the business, how productive they are, how they come to work, and how they actually enjoy the work that they do. So I think that's something that you can really see with only one day of going to the office. If that community is there, you can already feel it and sense it, and that's what drives my day to day.
That's wonderful. And I can't wait to hear more. I know you have some fun stories to share when we get into our questions of how you're helping cultivate that community. So, well, I just want to start off and say a huge thank you to everybody joining, and a huge thanks to this powerhouse panel of women joining us today. I'm so glad to be here with you all and share this time, and for sharing your, strategies for success and how you've gotten to where you are today. And I think a lot of this comes from like, what and why I asked you all to share, like, what's driving you. I love to hear kind of you all have had wonderful, successful careers, but like what drives you and what keeps you going? And, we all have tough days and things going on. So, how do you keep moving forward and, make your name and make your space and make your impact in the world and in your company. So excited to talk with you all today. I'm going to go ahead and actually just stop sharing so we can see everybody's faces a little bit more and have a little bit more to see as we can all talk about. So first, I will ask a question to Erica. So Erica, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out in the field of communications and really looking to make that big impact, a positive impact on their organization, really leave their mark?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I've spent 15 years in some form of communication. So the first 10 years, I actually started out in sports broadcasting. Behind the scenes, I was not in front of the camera. That made me way too nervous. But the past 10 years, I've spent that in social media. So I guess my advice is like when you're first starting out is to be a sponge, like really learn everything you can, shadow people that are in different roles than you, different departments, to kind of just get more knowledge about not only how your organization works, but the different skills it requires to be in those different departments and kind of like what their role is. So you can better understand on how you can help them with your role to make things easier. For example, I'm a social media manager, right? Like outside of writing, posts and like posting links, you know, I don't need to know how to be a graphic designer, but I do have those skills. I don't need to know how to be a video editor, but I do have those skills. So that helps me better self-serve and not rely on like, another department to create content for me if I need to get something out very quickly. Um, Having a little bit of knowledge of all of those things will help you also market yourself. If anybody's familiar with the world of social media, things are kind of up in the air right now. Twitter is now X and TikTok might be banned. So really don't know like where the world of social media is going. So having those kind of other skills kind of gives me a little bit of, longevity to maybe move somewhere else or just kind of have a broader set of skills. And it also helps you kind of figure out what you want to do. I started out in sports broadcasting. I realized that's not really what I wanted to do. And then I started doing social media and I was like, this is really exciting. It's always changing. I get to be creative. So I kind of just pursued that. I finally got some normal hours after I left sports broadcasting, which was nice. But yeah, that's what I would tell someone first starting out.
That's great. Thank you. And I know you shared with me, in that kind of sports broadcasting and early on in your career, like you were left alone and you're the one that's like sending out all the message and you're like, okay, well, I hope this is right. I hope this is it. And like the pressure, but then I think that, that helps build that character and build the responsibility. And like you said, like, no, you don't necessarily need to know all these different or parts of the aspects of kind of the broader organization, but having those in your back pocket for whenever something crazy happens or something goes that you can go and make those changes and pivot really quickly. And I think that that's a great part of your story as well of, having so much responsibility on your shoulders. It's such a kind of young age or young, early on in your career that helps you kind of be prepared for everything.
Yeah, I don't think there's a social media situation that I haven't been a part of. And really knowing the organization too, like if you're in a bind, you know exactly who to contact instead of like scrambling, like I don't know like who to talk to. So yeah, just having that awareness will definitely be helpful when you're first starting out.
Yeah. And I think knowing that, hey, whenever something is on fire, like sometimes we don't need to follow every single little process you go through. Like we need to go straight to the source. Like, let's get this done. And I think that's something of, don't be shy of if you know the right way to do it and know where you need to go to get it done, go there.
Yes. And social media fires tend to build pretty quickly. So you got to put them out quick.
Yes. Yeah. That's great advice. That's great. All right. Thank you. Next up, Andrea, I'll call on you here. So as a obviously wildly successful woman leader in internal communications and just communications in general and, building your business, what do you think really are the key traits and skills that have really helped you achieve your current position, but then also what you see in others as you're building out your business?
Well, I'm glad I look wildly successful.
You are.
I guess I am. Yeah, my team is really great and we do really good work, but it's hard. And being a woman, which is what we're talking about today, makes it even harder. Like we have to prove ourselves, 3 times as much as everybody else. And if you're a woman of color, the numbers are even worse. So I kind of want to build on what Erica said, and that's around learning. And, it looks like a lot of us have had fairly long careers or want to have long careers, and the world is changing so much. When I started in communication, there was no social media. And we were actually talking today. I had a client meeting and we were talking about working on Parliament Hill. So I'm Canadian. I started my comms career on Parliament Hill, faxing one at a time, faxing press releases, across the country. dialing, remembering dial each number, send the press release. So how much has changed since that? And we really need to we need to build up our confidence, but also be humble enough to understand that we don't know certain things and be curious and learn. I think that's a real key trait. And as communicators, again, kind of building on what Erica said, not just learning the communications craft, but getting outside of the echo chamber of communications. One of my favorite magazines, actually, I tuck it underneath my laptop, is Harvard Business Review. Like, this is what leaders are caring about. People like, I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. I've had her training, a huge fan of Amy Edmondson, who's an expert in psychological safety, which is all about listening. So getting out of the echo chamber and learning more than just your craft, learning about the world and what people care about is really, really critical to being a well-rounded communicator with a career that's going to have longevity and impact.
That's great advice. Yeah. Yeah. And again, kind of knowing what else is going on in the world around you, in the company around you. I feel like in communications, y'all are pretty keyed in on what's going on in different parts of the organizations, and sometimes knowing that first. And I think, that's something that you have to balance, in a balance slightly as well of, okay, what do we know? What can we share? How does that all work? So great to hear that. And yeah, to get outside input and understand what the people you're talking to are thinking about and what's important to them.
Yeah, but I think it's important to note that communications people are like that because we make an effort to be like, we make an effort to know what's going on in the world. We make an effort to know the context of the business, and that doesn't happen just naturally. So just to reinforce what Andrea said, I think especially early in career, that has to become a part of your routine to do news monitoring, to make sure that you go talk to people and you go to as many meetings as you can get yourself invited to know what is going on and what is important to the people in the business.
Yeah, that's great. That's great input. Also, let's go kind of keeping on that topic, because this is something that I think is important. Can you go ahead, Medea, and talk about like how you really balance that need for transparency with also like needing to maintain the confidentiality in sensitive situations and things like that?
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of us encounter at least weekly, if not daily, right? And there is a bias often from leaders of companies to keep everything very closed in versus being transparent, because no one can hurt us if no one knows, which is not true. So our job is to be the translators in the heart of the company sometimes, and to understand where that balance can lie, and then to influence others. So I have a bias for transparency to the point that we can be transparent, but you have to know, where does that transparency start to become a risk, right? Where does the transparency start to become a risk? We don't have to share everything, but we should share what we can. With employees especially, they're our greatest ambassadors or our greatest detractors, depending on how much in the fold they feel. But then also externally, how much can we share? We don't have to say no comment. Sometimes we can give at least a little bit, right, of what we know today. And part of that goes back to understanding what is the context in the world. For example, there was the bridge tragedy overnight. With the bridge collapse, that's a different context. That adds context to what's going on in the world, depending on who you work for or what you have going on today or what you're going to get asked, may depend on what you want to share based on what's going on today in the world. And then, of course, what's going on in the business, you know what's coming up, or you should be able to anticipate what's coming up. And that influences how transparent we can be about certain things today, because we don't want to misalign the messaging. You don't want to be super positive about something today if you know something super negative on that topic's coming out tomorrow, right? You want to be able to hedge a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Always have to throw that needle and find that balance for sure. Yeah.
Constant balancing act.
Yes. Yes. Great. All right, Augustina, next I'm coming to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts really on kind of what strategies, because I know as Medea just said, like the employees can be, great advocates for you, but they can also, be detractors for you as well. So I know that you run a large ambassadors program. So what strategies have you really found to be the most effective for really engaging employees and getting them to actively participate in the communication initiatives, not only receiving them and kind of, commenting back to them, but then also sharing those externally. I know you have a nickname coming off of one of those too. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that also.
Oh no, not again, the cupcake lady. Okay,
The
I'm gonna
cupcake
mention
lady.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe something just making a point on what media say, because I think this was the key for us as well. Um, Trying to find that balance between transparency and mitigating risk, but at the same time being clear of, like, from a brand perspective, what are your intentions with the employee? Because I feel like sometimes that transparency comes at the end and the employees can see that and they feel like they just been like brought in up to speed in the end, because like you need something from the employee, versus another thing is to communicate constantly and like being transparent on what's happening and like what you know or what you don't know, or like what your intentions are or what the call to action is with them, right? So I guess like that switch for us was really key. We started doing it from a marketing and internal initiatives perspective, and then going more towards like brand announcement and internal announcements. But I think we saw a lot of engagement when doing that, and finding, I don't know, like a go to place where they can find all the information, either a blog post, an internal blog post, or even Haiilo, or we have like these weekly office newsletters where we send like all the communications, and like we try making sure that like all the questions that are being heard in the office are addressed, and like we also like state what we know and try not to hide that information. Another thing which you tease about, Tara, is to start leveraging a little bit more the space in the office and the old-fashioned in-person events and interventions. So I know that like with COVID, everything went a little bit too digital, and that's harder to engage. That makes it harder to engage employees. So like what we tried doing was to do a lot of the announcements and communications we have from an office perspective in person, and offered bonding events, community building, or networking events after, or even like sometimes we would offer I don't know, free lunch if you come to like the office meeting this month, free lunch with like your whole team in a place that you like, or something like that, so that we would encourage people to not only take part of the communications, but also like build that community by themselves without us trying like to push it let's say forcefully. Another thing that we have done a lot is the gamification side of things, where like we started doing launch of specific initiatives or marketing campaigns, and asking for employees to take action on amplifying that message. For example, we would ask for them to engage with a social media post or reshare the post, or maybe refer, I don't know, if we were looking for someone to participate on a webinar, refer 3 colleagues that they think they could be great for the webinar, and based on those actions we would reward the first 50 to take the action, or the best results when they share, the ones that got the best results when they share on social or whatever. But like that rewarding and recognition process has helped us a lot get that employee more engaged on the game of being involved with what's going on internally at BCG. And I would say from a last thing, which I think sounds a little bit too obvious sometimes, is we started doing a lot of listening of our employees. And by listening, I mean, we have all these multiple surveys that go out, and like people fill them, and they are like 20 pages. And we know that like employees do not like filling those surveys. So we have tried to ask the questions in a more conversational way whenever we invite them to these office interventions, or whenever we are sending our newsletters, asking them what content they are expecting to receive, what communication channels they want to receive this content in, and from there start applying the actual feedback that they gave us. And on the next communication, we would highlight where the new feedback has been applied. So for them to notice that we are actually listening and paying attention to what they are suggesting, and not just dismissing and doing it as a checkbox. So I think that's something that sometimes from a business perspective, we tend to forget, because we are just like so overwhelmed with things, and we are just like trying to check the box and like send a message, and that's it. And there is a recipient on the other side, right? And that recipient is human, and we have been in their position as well. So like, it's good to proactively ask and listen to them. So yeah, I think that summarizes it in a nutshell what I think has worked for us so far. I'm aware that I didn't tell the cupcake story, but maybe we can save it for later, Tara.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I think that that's really important too, that you are calling out that this is where this change is coming from. I mean, nobody hates it more than whenever you fill out this long survey and then you're like, okay, where did this even go? Like, did they even read these? So knowing that you're coming back and showing them this is coming from this, XYZ feedback, and we're implementing this change, speaks volumes. And then that motivates people to want to, continue to fill out those surveys and to, continue to give you that feedback, because they know that something's actually going to come from that, versus it just going into, yeah, like you said, it's just a checkbox and it's going into a black hole that nobody's really doing anything about. So I love that you pointed that. And I think that's super important. And I mean, something that we always share with our clients is, doing the annual, year-end survey. You're catching somebody in one day, in that one moment. They might have had a bad day, or they might have had a wonderful day. They just closed a huge deal or something. But you're just catching it in that one spot. So being able to continuously survey them, and almost, why we say, like, keep a pulse on the organization and survey them. I mean, even at Haiilo, we have a weekly survey that's just like, how was your week? And it's, a couple of smiley faces with the different emojis, and you choose which one. And then there's a couple of questions that our leadership team changes on a weekly basis to try and understand what's going on within the organization. Where do they think they need, more insights from us, and doing that on a regular basis. So then they can see it change over time as well. And you're really getting a pulse of the organization and seeing that timeline, versus having the one-stop shop, year-end 20-page survey that people, halfway into it are like tired of typing, like, I have something else to do, like, and just, blow through it quickly. So I think importance is doing it on a regular basis, so that you can really understand and see how it's changing, and get people in kind of the overall, and not just that one moment in time. So I think that's great. Okay, we're about halfway through here, so I want to make sure we get through all of our questions, but we're doing well on time here. So Andrea, I would love to hear from you, as, being a woman leader and a founder, how do you really ensure that your team is diverse and inclusive, and what steps are you all taking to really foster that environment of equality and respect for your organization?
So this is where I take my communicator's hat off and put my leader's hat on.
Yeah.
And so, we have a small team, so it's not that diverse, but we try. And I like to look at diversity, not just the color of your skin, but, neurodiversity, and all other aspects of diversity. And of course, with our clients as well, making sure that we represent those values, which is super important. So one of the things we pride ourselves at my agency is the client experience, and making sure that our clients feel, when they're working with us, they get amazing, not just amazing service and amazing results, but that the process is really great. So we try and make sure that we understand our clients, respect our clients. Like, we've got clients across North America. So understanding like different cultural nuances. You know, if they're an international client, what do we need to do? For example, if we're sending a newsletter out in Southeast Asia versus North America, what's appropriate? What will work in those circumstances? So I think it goes two ways. As a leader, we have some pretty core values: learning, trust, generosity is one of them, which I'd like to talk about a little bit, which is, so I mentioned Brene Brown. Her definition of generosity is, I am going to give the best possible interpretation of that person's thoughts, feelings, and actions. And we all have a negativity bias where we kind of over rotate on, oh, you know, this thing happened and maybe it's because they don't like me, or maybe it's because they're trying to sink my business or whatever, when it really could be a very positive reason that something happened. So those values, I think, are really important. Value, we talked about transparency, so openness, trust, generosity, and learning, and a little bit of humility too. Like, again, some of the issues that we have in our world are because we don't understand and each other enough. We don't listen like we're truly listening. And I think those are really important things. So I think it's, diversity is a lot more than just who's on your team. And if you got a representative from a variety of backgrounds, it's really about how you work, how you live, and how that work reaches other people.
That's great. And I think really the respect part of that is great. And going at it, like you said, the Bernays approach of going at it with, you know, the most positive experience, or giving him the benefit of the doubt. You know, we hear things differently than sometimes, you know, people intend, and especially in communications over email or, you know, over messages. Like, you can't see the expressions on the person's face. Exactly. Yes.
We automatically, and you know, like in the US, there's a election coming up. There's increased polarization. It's even happening in Canada and in other places in the world. And it's super sad to see. And it's because we don't spend the time to understand each other's perspectives. And we don't really think that, you know, we automatically connect somebody's beliefs and values and political beliefs with a certain set of criteria. You know, if you're one party, you're this, and if you're another party, you're that. Well, it's not black and white like that. So really understanding each other, listening is super important.
I agree. And I think doing, you know, having that coming from the top down too. I mean, you need everybody to do that, but as a leader, being the one to help set that tone and be like, I really want to understand where everybody's coming from. I want to understand what's going on. I think, you know, speaks volumes to that as well, of you need lead by example, and by, you know, what you're saying and what you're doing on both sides.
Yeah, we did some really interesting work for a client at the last election, around the election and around being open to listening to other people's perspectives, and not, you know, whether you're, you know, putting people in a box. And it really was really helpful for that organization.
That's great. And whenever you say putting people in a box, that reminds me of kind of just like, whenever some people think of like women in technology or women in business, like that's a box that we're put into as well. And like, push ourselves out of that. We can make our own lines, and, you know, come out of that. It doesn't have to be everything in a box. And grouping people. I mean, as much as we're in communications and we like to segment and target to make sure people are getting the right information at the right time and the right channel, the segmenting done on the computer, it needs to be very different than the segmenting we're doing in our head, and the perspectives of how we're speaking and, you know, being kind to each other. Yeah. So I think that kind of loops into kind of the balance of it all as well, of kind of, you know, knowing what we need to do, knowing what we need to communicate, But then also balancing, as I mentioned, like the box of being a woman in business. Erica, can you talk to us a little bit about like how you're finding your balance in life? And especially through some of the difficult times, you've seen a lot on the social side, and the people are very mean behind the computer saying things, that they would never hopefully say to your face or to, to anybody else. But so how are you really balancing like your personal and professional life as a woman leader, and what strategies have really helped you achieve success in both of those areas, and really like separating, okay, work's on fire right now, but it's time for me. I need to, live my own life as well.
Yeah, no. This is super important. And to be clear, I cannot fix your elevator. You can message me, but I can't do anything but forward that message along. I'm sorry. I'm not an engineer, just a social media manager. But I think I was lucky enough to kind of learn this lesson early on in my career, which I feel like not a lot of people do. Um, I was at a very like high-powered media company, and there are no boundaries there. So after like 7 years of that, I'm like, listen, I need to put my foot down. I have one phone, so all of my work notifications, personal notifications were all on one device. So the first thing I did was I need two phones. I need a work phone and I need a personal phone. I can't. I know some people like don't live by that, but like I need that separation. Otherwise I'm just gonna go nuts. Um, and then I changed careers because working in that industry, there's really no 9 to 5, like I would be working until like 2 in the morning and then have to be in the next day at 8 a.m. And no one really cares if you're tired, if you're going through something. So I was like, listen, I need a change. So I did a huge career pivot. And I went to the healthcare industry, which was different. But it was 9 to 5 and I had holidays off, and that was really new to me. And it like opened my world up. But I think we need to be mindful, like boundaries change, your life is changing, your needs are going to be different. And I really found that out during the pandemic. So during that job, I was working remotely, but when everybody started working remotely, those lines of like when you're on and when you're off were very blurred. People just kind of expected you to be always on, and I was like not for that. So I was very clear to people. I'm like, listen, by 6 o'clock, you will not be able to contact me. I will not be on email. I will not be answering text messages, phone numbers, phone calls, nothing. So that is kind of my cutoff, even to this day, like 6 o'clock, laptop close, like whatever is going on can wait till tomorrow. And what kind of forces me to do that is I cook dinner every night. So that's another thing about me. I love cooking. And I cook like really like fun things that could take some time. So I got to start that at like 6 o'clock. So I'm just like, listen, I got to close my laptop. I got to start dinner. Okay, people. So that's what I started doing in the pandemic. That hard line, separate phones. And I was very clear to my manager about that. I was like, these are the boundaries I need. And is that okay? And if you have, a great manager, a great leader, they'll be open to that and they'll listen to you and hopefully support you through that journey. I mean, to this day, I still keep a separate phone, still that 6 o'clock cutoff. But you really just need to evaluate like what you need, and not be afraid to ask for it. And, if something's really like creeping in on you and you're like, listen, I need to separate myself for a little bit, don't be afraid to ask for it. Being in social media, like we see like the chatter of everything going on. Like we were talking earlier about the bridge tragedy that happened overnight. We see that all up on social media. And I think one of the things that stands out are like school mass shootings. It's really heavy, especially for me living in Connecticut. We had one back in 2012, and whenever those come up, it kind of it brings up those like horrible memories. So I had to be like, listen, I need to take an hour where I'm not looking at this and walk away, because it was a lot. But everybody's like really understanding at Otis, which it's thankful. You know, they were cool with like, it's okay if you don't even bring your phone with you, just like get outside and just like walk away. And I think like not a lot of people think about that with their social media managers in businesses. They just think of us, you know, we're putting out posts and things like that, but we see everything that's going on, and we're listening to that chatter, and it can be a lot sometimes. So you just have to kind of self-evaluate, say, hey, what do I need right now in this moment to make me feel a little bit better? And just, you know, don't be afraid to ask for it, or just, you know, hard line, like, all right, I'm walking away. Things can wait, you know. You know, your mental health is definitely more important than you know, kind of dealing with that. Of course, there's always time sensitive things that we have to deal with, but you know, keeping that balance when you can is super important. And I always reiterate that to younger workers, like, don't burn yourself out early. Like, know what you can do and do your best.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, you know, especially newer or, you know, younger people coming into the workforce, like, you know, and all of us, like, we want to make something of ourselves. We want to show what we can do, but you need to take time for yourself, and it's okay to pause for a minute. And as somebody put in the chat, you know, like, empathy is so important, and I think that is huge. And yeah, to remember that there's a human behind everything you do, and just keeping that in the back of your mind. And again, you making sure that you're recognizing yourself as a human as well, and not just, I need to fire all of these out. So that's great advice. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 more questions left that we have prepared, but I would love for you all to start asking some questions in the chat as well. While you're doing that, August, I'm coming over to you. So we've already talked about, like, some strategies for finding success in comms, but I'd really love to hear your take on what some of the biggest challenges you faced in communications and kind of overall professionals are today, and how can they really kind of overcome to find their own success.
That's a tough question. That's a tough question to summarize it. I feel like there are so many obstacles and challenges that you are faced, like, from a comms perspective on the day to day. But I think that one of the biggest one that comes to mind when I think about it is streamlining the communications, and like being able to actually be selective and define what is actual, like, worth of communicating, what is not really adding any value, what might be, as media mentioned before, like a potential risk, but like, do not just push the message because your leadership or like someone above you is asking to do so, you know. Like, I feel like they're like, again, like, in that kind of rush of the day to day, we kind of like lose sight of the end goal. And then sometimes, like, the messages that we as communicators and even as a marketeer, like, we throw out there might not always be aligned to the end goal. And then when you stop and you take a step back, you say, like, okay, wait, is this adding value or getting me closer to the end goal or to the end objective? Or is this actually not adding any value, confusing employees, or disengaging employees? So, like, I think that's the main key. That's the main thing. Really related to this is also having personas for the employees as well, because I feel like, as we do from a marketing perspective, you wouldn't launch a campaign to the wrong target audience. You will do a really tough analysis on, like, defining your persona and being really strategic on, like, what tone of voice, what message, and like, how are you going to talk to that persona, right? Employees are the same. We have people that are really senior, 50 years of experience, people that are junior, that are just getting started, not understanding anything about consulting business. You have different target audience, different age gap, different nationalities and different backgrounds. Like, we are a global organization, and everywhere comes from a different place, where in the end that ends up building different needs in terms of communication. So the same recipe fit all, it's not something that works in comms, nor in marketing. And like, for that, you need to understand who is behind that communication, who are you trying to reach, and what is that person interested in receiving. And I would say the last thing is trying to be consistent between the message that you send or that you advocate for, and how you act as an organization. Because I've seen this in all the organizations that I work on. It's really easy to say, we are super diverse, we are, I don't know, all about work-life balance, we are, and then you see, as Erica mentioned, people working until 1 a.m. and like being called by their managers, like, this is needed right now, ASAP, I don't care if you are having dinner. So that doesn't align to the message that we are trying to send as a brand, right? So I think acting upon that message and being the brand being the first one to advocate for that message is kind of also key for that. And I think that's a really strong challenge that I see in every company.
Yeah, that's great insight. That and yeah, just thinking of how you're balancing it. I feel like a lot of our topics today is all around balance and kind of, you gotta think on both sides of like what we're delivering from the organization versus what we're doing as humans as well. Okay, Medea, I'm coming to you to wrap up our little virtual fireside chat today. It's a little chilly here in Atlanta too. It's raining. I feel like I do need a little fire going to warm me up here. But what advice would you give to other women looking to advance their career in internal communications or kind of other leadership communications roles?
So assuming that you have all of your communication skills solid, because that's always first, right? The next thing you need to do to be able to move up, in my experience anyway, is to start to understand the business and the business side of things that you don't think you need to understand as a communicator. You should know some basic financial terms. You should know what they mean. You should know what impacts them. You should know your business goals. You should know how communications impacts those business goals. Start to think from the inside out a little bit. Start with the business. What does the business need? What does the business need from me today? What's the thing that's going to make the most value? Not what did I plan to do today, but what does the business need from me? And if you can start to speak that language and you can start to talk in that greater context outside of your bubble, then you're going to be a lot more respected in meetings. Your value as a leader is going to be seen. The fact that you can see the context and the big picture and how you fit into that big picture and where you can provide the most influence and the most value for the organization as a whole or for the industry that you're in even, that will help you move up within your organization. I also am a great believer that communications, solid communication strategy, solid communications skills transcend industry. You can pick them up and move them, but you have to be willing to then learn about that industry. You have to be able to learn about the context that you're in at that moment, and you need to be able to do it fairly quickly. So make sure that if you do change industries, and I've done it a lot, you early in your time in that new industry, you aren't afraid to attend a training, to schedule some time with the experts, to find out what are the big rocks that we need to move here, and what's the timeline for doing that. The greater business acumen you can have, the more seriously you'll be taken, particularly as a communicator. I think that often in a boardroom, we are seen as a nice to have, but not a serious piece of the business strategy. The more you can speak that language and be able to speak to, well, we did X and it impacted Y, and make sure that Y is important to the people in that room, the more success you'll have in your career, in my experience.
That's great insight. Thanks. Okay, so I saw a question come in that I think is great, and it kind of leads into this, but this can be for any of y'all, whoever wants to answer it. The question was, authenticity and empathy are necessary components in communications, but it doesn't always feel safe to do so. How can we find that balance of being human, but also delivering on the organization message that they're asking? Who wants to take that?
Can I start? Because I might have to go off on a rant. Because I spent my whole career trying to limit the amount of business jargon and the corporate speak. And the best compliment I've ever had from a client was you're the only person who can take corporate, am I allowed to swear? Corporate bullshit speak and turn it into something that sounds human. And I think a lot of what we need to do as communicators is persuade people leaders, managers, that the more we communicate with empathy and in a voice that sounds like a real person, that the more impactful our work will be. And I mean, I think that's really, really important. And there's tons of scientific data out around this. Like I wrote a blog on how, like around neuroscience and communication. Like if you understand the human brain and you understand how people work, you'll know that a more authentic human tone in communication will make a huge difference and a bigger impact. And you just have to persuade people to do that, because that's really what we should all be doing. And we've done this with one particular client. He came to us about 3 years ago, and he'd moved from what he was the director of finance, moved from one organization to another. He had a bunch of change that he wanted to implement. So some communication projects all around change. And the first thing he said is, we have no trust in this organization. And so we've worked really closely together to make sure that the tone, how we communicate, is human, empathetic, real, and that builds trust. We're not hiding behind something that people can't understand, the corporate bullshit, that drivel that comes out so often. And it also sparks some joy. Like when we're doing stuff for clients, we want employees to have a little bit of joy in the communication. And it can just be something that's easier to read with a bunch of bullets and a little bit of humor. And so, yeah, do not be afraid of standing up for that, is what I would say.
That's great. And the humor, I think, helps give kind of the human side of it as well, and knowing that, you know, there's people behind that, and pulling on that string of connection. Does anybody else want to add to that, or we have another one as well?
I'll add to that. Early in the conversation, I mentioned that I think a lot of times our job is to be the translator and also the heart. And I think that that's really what it comes down to. And it's exactly what you said, Andrea, about taking, I work with chemical engineers, and man, way over my head, the stuff that they say, right? So I don't want to use the word dumb it down, because I don't think that's really what it is, but putting things into words that real people use and being that voice of the organization is so important that I agree, fight for it, because it is one of the most important parts of our job, particularly with internal communications.
I wrote it down. You can probably not see it, but I like the heart of the company. And I wrote that down because our logo is in the shape of a heart for a bunch of reasons. But yeah, we're all about heart, and I totally agree.
Erica, did you want to chime in on that one as well?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm coming with a social perspective to this. But if we're ever kind of trying to comment on something that's a little bit more sensitive from an external perspective, most of the time coming from the brand channel comes off as a little disingenuous. So we try to identify an executive who has a nice social media presence to kind of be the voice for the organization. And like Andrea said, kind of putting that like human to the voice rather than like a brand, like, doing lip service to something. So we really try to be mindful of that. And we try to pick the right executive. We're not always going to go to our CEO for, a certain statement. We might go to our chief people officer to talk about something that's more DE&I related. So whatever it is, we try to be mindful of that. And our employees definitely see that on social media. They see like these executives talking about certain things, like they're the first kind of say in, where the organization stands. And then, we usually kind of share that statement onto the brand channel, but we usually try not to comment from the brand channel when it's more kind of like sensitive matters. But it's just one perspective from a social media manager.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad you added that in. Okay, I think we'll have time for one more question, then we'll wrap up. So make sure everybody stays on schedules today. I know, Andrea, you shared a little bit about how you're staying up to date with latest trends, but I'd love to hear from some of the others too, of like, staying up to date with the latest trends and technologies in the field of communications, and like what resources do you really rely on for continued learning and development. So we can kind of give this little piece of nugget of advice to others as we're wrapping up our fireside chat today.
Can someone say my blog?
Yeah, Vision to Voice blog, check.
Shameless plug. I'm in business too.
Yes.
I rely a lot on PRSA's resources. So so just keeping up with that, they put a lot of stuff out really regularly that I can at least skim over. They have great workshops and classes if you have an area where you feel weaker. I had been kind of out of the media relations side for a while and then came back into a role that had more media relations. So went out and took one of their workshops just to refresh and make sure I know what's happening today in that world, because it had been a little bit. But I also think that just knowing where you're weak, knowing where you haven't had as much exposure, and then going out and seeking that, and just goodness sakes, never stop learning.
Right. Anybody else want to chime in before we wrap up?
I have some great social media resources if people are interested. I just follow them on LinkedIn and it comes right through my feed. So I'm constantly staying updated, and like social media trends last for like, I feel like 30 seconds and then it's on to the
Yeah.
next thing.
All right.
So following these groups definitely helps me kind of stay on top of that.
Great.
Yeah, maybe my advice, something that I used to do a lot, and now I advise my team to do, is find experts as well within your business, that you look up to, or like that you find that they know of a subject that you are interested in learning, and just reach out to them and like ask them for like a 25-minute, 15-minute coffee chat, and like try to pick their brain on like different things that like might interest you, because that could be the starter of you rediscovering something that maybe you thought it was not for you, and now out of the blue, wow, advocacy, so it's always good to like have someone's perspective and like learn from others' experiences as well.
Wonderful. Well, I want to say thank you all so much to all of you that joined, and then especially to our wonderful panelists. Thank you for joining me on this little fireside chat today and really contributing to the conversation, and just sharing your strategies and sharing, opening up and how you can empower other women in their communications journey as well. And just as a reminder for everybody else, we will be sending out a recording once we close up this webinar to reference back to share with your networks. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. I'm sharing this so you can see who everybody is again, where they're from. Please, and in that invite that you received, it has a link to everybody's LinkedIn, so you can connect with us. And like Erica mentioned, start kind of staying in the know with all the trends. You can look at the Vision to Voice blog. But I'm just so encouraged by this. Thank you all so much. Thank you for listening, and let us know if you have any questions, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.